Earlier tonight, I had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Tim Wheeler with Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership about the New York Times story alleging that the NRA just hates science. Take a listen. Well, Dr. Wheeler, thank you again, sir, for coming on the program. A real pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Cam.
You bet. First of all, I have to say I really enjoyed your letter to the editor in one of the Florida papers the other day, talking about the doctors who are asking all kinds of invasive questions of their patients about, their gun ownership habits, their gun storage habits, and things of that nature. I thought it was a real breath of fresh air to see your perspective.
Well, thank you, Cam.
Absolutely. Now, I wanted to have you on the program because last week the New York Times ran a story that, unfortunately, I think has been getting some legs in the world of punditry. I've seen a lot of op-eds discussing this story that claims, in essence, the NRA hates science, and the NRA hates research, and the NRA has blocked the CDC from doing valuable, life-saving research on quote-unquote gun violence, Dr. Wheeler. You've examined this issue in great detail, have you not?
I have, Cam. And this is an example of the old saying that those who are not aware of history are condemned to repeat it. You mentioned my op-ed in the Florida newspaper, the Sun Sentinel. This was about doctors, asking their patients about guns in the home, motivated by political considerations of gun control. This is an old issue that has flared up again. Well, in the same way, the New York Times has resurrected an old strategy of the gun control movement from the 1990s, actually the early and mid-1990s. Mm-hmm. And that's this thing about having federal agencies, with tens of millions of dollars in budget to be able to fund basically propaganda in the form of pseudoscientific research. And they farm these research projects, so-called research projects, out to sympathetic doctors around the country to churn out these articles that condemn gun ownership one way or another, and supposedly backed up by scientific data. And then these articles are, in turn, published in prestigious medical journals, like the Journal of the American Medical Association and the New England Journal of Medicine. We shut that down back in the 1990s pretty effectively, and they've been afraid to raise the issue until now.
Yeah, why do you think, we see this, as you mentioned, this first came up in the mid-90s. Is this a matter, Dr. Wheeler, of, all right, well, we haven't brought out this argument in some time. Let's try to, revive the public health argument. Since crime is going down in this country, perhaps using the gun control as crime control argument isn't going to be as effective, so let's move to the other option, the public health. Now, what's interesting is that the solutions that these folks are offering are the same, whether or not you're talking about gun control as a public health measure or gun control as a crime prevention measure. Is this really just an excuse to bring up the same types of gun control legislation?
Yes, Cam, that is exactly what it is. These anti-gun, gun control zealots on the national scene understand the political scene. They know that things have not been going their way politically for years now. We've had increase in discrete carry laws throughout the country. Constitutional carry has caught on, most recently in Arizona, where this terrible shooting took place. And so the political currents are against gun control. People get that. So the gun controllers, once again, are trying to revive another strategy. Instead of going directly at it as a political question out there in the political arena for people to debate and then vote on, they're going through the back door, the scientific establishment, to try to make a scientific case. And then they can go to the public and say, well, look here, all the Centers for Disease Control or the Institute of Medicine, these prestigious scientific organizations are saying that we really need to institute these gun control measures on a scientific basis.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, Dr. Wheeler, again, at the risk of having the mainstream media take what I say out of context, it's very easy to say, well, science says this. and expect people to believe you. In fact, a lot of people may just say, oh, okay, well, a guy in a lab coat told me this, so it must be true. When you look at an issue, though, like gun control, where it is so philosophical on either side of the argument, frankly, I hate to say it, but I have a hard time trusting that any given study is going to be done in a way that does not already prejudge or presuppose the outcome.
Well, unfortunately, you're right there, Cam, and you're also right that the mainstream media would misquote you. That was my regular experience when I first started engaging this issue as a medical doctor back in the early 1990s. They more often than misquoting me, though, they would just ignore me, and they would ignore the sociology researchers like John Lott and Gary Kleck and others, Gary Mauser in Canada, many other prestigious scientific researchers who had found that firearm ownership in responsible hands is a good thing for society. They completely ignored that. But the thing is, Cam, they could not ignore you. They could not ignore me. They couldn't ignore Professor Lott and Professor Gary Kleck and the rest of them forever. And eventually they ran up against a brick wall of reality. And it hasn't been the same for them since. But now they're starting to, since it's been a few years, they're trying to revive this old strategy. I think it's time for a history lesson for the American people, Cam.
Well, I do too.
And I think it's going to be relatively easy to bring the American people up to speed, especially for those folks who maybe weren't around or were very young during the 1990s. I'm not getting any younger myself, but one of the advantages of having been around a while is that I've seen this stuff happen, and now I'm starting to see it again. So I hope to be able to pass on my experience and my observations to the younger generation so they can be aware of what the gun controllers are up to.
Well, I do too. Again, I don't think you'll find any gun owner in this country. Maybe there are a few who are opposed to technology and science, but most of us like innovation. It helps us get firearms that are safer and better and more reliable. So we're not opposed to science, but again, the idea of this politically driven and politically motivated science is what concerns gun owners, and I think rightfully so.
Well, you're right, Cam. And one thing, too, I think the public is a lot better educated and a lot more aware of scientific issues and the pitfalls of scientific advocacy than they were, maybe 15, 20 years ago.
I hope so. Well, Dr. Wheeler, again, I appreciate you coming on the program, sir, and I look forward to talking to you again very soon.